Yo, what's good? Yo, this is Jeff, another one of my little writing advice, not writing advice, writing venting. Let me just say this, venting. I be venting on here. One of my little writing thoughts segments. Anyway, I finished the first sequel. I'm about to finish. Let me say it more accurately, because people are quick to call you liars. I'm about to finish my first sequel, and it has been a delight. I chose Harlem Shake to write a sequel and to continue writing 8 books, right? And I don't know how it's going to be, but I have an outline, a loose outline, and I plan to outline the books a book ahead, so I will have an idea of where I'm going to go. But I have an overall story that I want to do. So what happens in each story, I don't know yet until I finish the book before it. So I'm about to finish book 2. On the last 2 chapters, I have about 200 more words to write in the second to last chapter, and in the last chapter I have already outlined. So the thing I wanted to really just talk about, because again, I don't know who gets whatever they get from these little talk sessions, so I just say what I'm thinking about and what I'm going through, and my resolutions to it, which may or may not be the best resolutions. Who knows? But they work for me and they get my job done. So if I ever become somebody great, hey, you go back to this and you say, look, that's what Jeff did when he was writing his sequel and his books and so forth and so on. So yeah, that's how I do it. So anyway, writing a sequel is always important. Like with me, I didn't write a 8-book story from my first book. I knew that there was more stories that I could tell, but I sometimes approach my sequels like episodes on TV. JJ's gonna get older, Thelma's gonna get older, but every day is its own good times, you know what I'm saying? As opposed to something like Luke Cage, where the whole season is laying out for that big climactic conclusion. I have that in each one of my books, so that way, you will have to read them in order, because who wants to read a character when they're older and then read them when they're younger? But we do that all the time with prequels, and origin stories. So sometimes you get the character before you get the origin story, like we did with Wonder Woman. We got her in Justice League before we got her origin story in film, in the cinematic universe. So my stories have endings. You can read one book and that's good, or you can read another book, which the one I'm writing is going to be another book, and then from there you'll get a whole nother story and a whole nother experience and all this other yada 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 stuff. So that was interesting. There was elements in this story that even up until the end of the book, I'm writing things about characters that I didn't know. I didn't have it in my outline. They said things like, one of my characters was brilliant and talked about Arab slavery as sexvery. She did the Jesse Jackson thing and went and created a word, and I have no, it's all coming from my creations, but I'm in her character. So I actually am going to miss writing her character, and I don't know where, how that character is going to appear in other ones. But, that's one of the things that you encounter when you get to the end of a story, is your feelings towards the characters, especially if characters are going to die, but they are going to die if you don't write another story including them. So that experience of walking with them is very much like reading a book. You get attached to them. The other thing is, and I wanted to do this before I started writing the second to last chapter, because I started to feel it coming on, and that is the need to bring everything together. Like, you know, when you're writing a chapter, you know, you got to get that scene, you got to get it to the next scene, and sometimes if you forget not details, but needed information you thought that scene would include, you can find a way. You have time within the book to either make it irrelevant and you don't need it, or to have some other element in the story cover it. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of what I did with this book. I did not try to jam everything into each chapter, which, you know, I actually did, but some things I was able to reiterate and do better in the following chapter. But when you get to the end of the book, yo, everything you thought of, every little point, every little plot element, every little character that you started talking about, you've got to wrap it up, you know, and that is really interesting. And I just about did that now with my characters, or with the story, and it's coming out good, but it certainly was an experience, you know, certainly was an experience. This last chapter, I told my wife, I said, yo, I might not even wrap it up like riding off into the sunset type scenario. I might end this chapter, because there's so much action. I write action stories, so there's so much action in this story that it may just end with, and he stomps him on the chest and his lifeless body falls limp. That might be just like the end of the book. And I mean, I haven't studied enough literature or books to know if, you know, they always do that or not, but I know it's the first time for me. So I'm really, you know, if the action, you know, really takes off, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to drop it right like it's hot. It's like, pow, the end. So, yeah, I don't really have any tips. I just know that that's what I tried to do. I tried to wrap up every story element in the end of my book. I write, I mean, I'm down with people who write sequels. I'm down with the continued stories. You know what I'm saying? But for me, even the continued stories, you got to wrap everything up. So you're going to encounter this at some point anyway. So that's it. I just wanted to make a little blurb. This is 8 minutes. So even when I'm trying to be short, I'm long. But yeah, I may make another blurb, a little video after I finish the book, and talk about, you know, the sequel and how it was to write a sequel. But deuces, yo, keep writing. If you keep writing, you'll finish. All right. Stories are dope. Peace.